All right, we're looking at lesson 1-4, or measuring in the metric system. And the first thing that you need to understand is what measurement types we have. In the metric system, when you're measuring length, you have 4 choices: millimeter, centimeter, meter, and kilometer. You can see their abbreviations right here in the chart. These are all for measuring length. Here they give you examples of how big those measurement types are. So if you have something very small, you would measure it with millimeter, because a millimeter is only about the thickness of a dime. A centimeter is about the same size as the width of your pinky. A meter stick is about the same as a yardstick, and I'm sure you've probably used a meter stick in your science classes. And a kilometer is your largest measuring for length. And that 1 kilometer is about the same size as 11 football fields. And some of you may have participated in the run for country fair, and I believe they usually use kilometers to measure those as well. Capacity is measuring liquid. We only have 2 measurements for that, milliliter and liter. A milliliter is quite small. A teaspoon is 5 milliliters. So 1 milliliter would only be about 1/5 of a teaspoon. So that's quite small. Whereas the liter is much larger. I'm sure you're familiar with a 2-liter bottle of soda. So obviously 1 liter would be half of that. They do make 1-liter bottles. You may have seen those too. To measure weight or mass, we have 3 metric measurements. We have milligram, which is the same as the weight of a mosquito, so very, very light. Gram, the weight of a paper clip, also very, very light. And kilogram, it's equal to about the size of a bunch of bananas. Now, obviously that can range, but an average bunch of bananas. Although you will be dealing with some questions that have to do simply with what would be an appropriate metric measurement to use, probably most of your time in this lesson will be spent converting within the metric system. One of the reasons that so many countries use the metric system is that everything is based on powers of 10. You'll notice here in our reading that it says to change a unit in the metric system, you're simply either going to multiply or divide by a power of 10. So we're talking about 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Okay, powers of 10. This would be considered our metric chart. If you remember from the last slide, we didn't have this many length measurements. In fact, we had 4. But you'll notice that in the chart we have more, and that's because each one represents one of those powers of 10. Our one right in the middle is our base. So that actually is just worth 1. Just 1. This is a decameter. Decameters are 10 meters. Hectometer, 100 meters. Now the reason we don't see that on the measurement chart is because there's not a tool that is a hectometer. So you can't use a hectometer. And then kilometer is 100 meters, and that was on our chart. Decimeter is 1/10 of a meter. So it's 10 away. A centimeter is 100th of a meter, and a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. So how are we going to use this chart? If we have a unit of measure that is small, let's say centimeters, and we want to change it into something larger, then we are simply going to divide. And we're going to divide by the power of 10 that separates the two. So if we were going to change from centimeters to meters, we're going from something smaller to something larger. So we're going to divide, and it's 10, 100. it's 100 away. So we're going to divide by 100. If you change from a larger unit to a smaller, we're going to multiply. And again, by the power of 10 that separates them. So let's say that we had a kilometer and we wanted to change it to a meter. We are going to multiply by 10, 100, 1,000. We would multiply by 1,000. Okay, the easiest way to look at this is with an actual example. So let's look at this one. We have 50 meters and we want to change them to millimeters. So we look at our chart. This chart will always be available to you in the classroom. So we're going from meters to millimeters. So how many powers of 10 is that? That's 10, 100, 1,000. So we're going to use the number 1,000. Now we have to know whether we should multiply or divide by that number. So we're going to multiply because we're going to something smaller. So we take our original number, 50, and we multiply by 1,000. So 50 liters is equivalent to 50,000 milliliters. Let's look at another example. This time I've also included the liter chart just to show you that the meter chart and the gram chart and the liter chart are really all the same, just replacing the M's, the meters here, with L's for liters. And if we were doing grams, it would be the same thing, but with a G. So all these L's would become G's. So let's say that we're going from 50 centiliters and we want to change them to liters. So what is our power of 10 we're using? We're going from centiliter to liter. So that's 10, 100. So we're going to use the number 100. We're going to a larger unit, so we're dividing. So we're going to take our 50 and we're going to divide by 100. And so 50 centiliters is equivalent to 5/10 of a liter. We're doing good. Now, when it comes to a mixed metric measurement, this is when you have something that has two labels. In our customary system, that would be like saying that I am 5'3" tall. It's feet and it's inches. So it's very common to have a measurement like that. If we have two labels, something like this, 5 meters, 15 centimeters, and we want to change it all to one label. So if I'm 5 feet 3 inches tall, that is also equivalent to 63 inches. We want to change all of these to one label. So one of them will be the wrong one. We're either going to change them all to meters, in which the centimeters would be wrong, or we're going to change them all to centimeters, which would mean the meters is the one that's wrong. And then we're going to add it to the one that was right. So, again, best way is to look at an example. So if we're going to change 8 meters and 12 centimeters all to centimeters, 8 is the one that is wrong. So we need to change it. So to go from from meter to centimeter, we're going 2 places over. So that's 10, 100. We're going to use the number 100. We're going to multiply because we're going from something larger, meter, to something smaller, centimeter. And we would take 8 times 100. That would be 800. We would then add it to the 12 that's already there, and we would get an answer of 812 centimeters. 800 plus 12, 812. This example is just doing it the other way around. If we have our 8 meters, 12 centimeters, and we're going to change them to meters, then 12 is the one that is technically wrong, and we're going to change it and then add it to our 8. So how do we change centimeters to meters? We're going from small to large, so we're going to divide. You might notice that basically that means if you're moving left on the chart, you're going to divide. If you're moving right on the chart, you're going to multiply. And by what? It's going from centimeters to meters, which is 2 places over, so that's 10, 100. So 100, we're going to divide by 100. 12 divided by 100 is 12 hundredths, or 0.12. If we add 8 and 0.12, we get 8.12, or 8 and 12 hundredths of a meter. Now, this concludes today's lesson, but I want you to know that there is also another video clip on this. It's specifically just about changing within the metric system, converting, and it's what I sometimes call a shortcut. So you might want to check that out. Thank you.